Hello students, and welcome to this video for Excel Chapter 2 Mid-Level Exercise number 1. We're going to be going really in depth here today with the different functions we've been learning throughout this last chapter here. And we're on page 527 of your textbook, page 527. I'll read the info while you're turning there. As the manager of the gift shop at the Metropolitan Zoo, you are responsible for managing the weekly payroll. Your assistant developed a partial worksheet, but you need to enter the formulas that calculate the regular pay, overtime pay, gross pay, taxable pay, withholding tax, FICA, and net pay. In addition, you want to include total pay columns and calculate some basic statistics. As you construct formulas, make sure you use absolute and relative cell references correctly in the formulas. So we're going to get started doing that. Step A, open E2M1 Payroll, and it says to save it with our first and last name. So I'm going to do that, File, Save As, and I'm going to go and I'm going to save it here to my OneDrive. You're going to save it to the folder you need to. So your flash drive, essentially. And of course, I'm putting underscore, last name, first name. And I'll push enter. Make sure I have it in the right place. All right. It says here for step B, study the worksheet structure and read the business rules in the notes section. And essentially what the notes section is down here is it's telling us what we're going to need to do or how we're going to be able to calculate. So number one, the base work week is 40 hours. So if you've worked a job, you know that's considered full-time as 40 hours. Regular pay is based on hourly wage and hours worked up to 40. Then two, overtime pay is based on overtime hours, the hourly wage, and overtime rate. So overtime is where you're getting time and a half. So if you make $10 an hour and you work overtime, then you make 15 because you make the 10 and then of course half of that added to it. The gross pay is the total of regular pay and overtime pay. So that's all of your pay. That's what gross pay means. And then the taxable pay is the difference between the gross pay, so difference meaning minus, the gross pay and the product of the number of dependents and deduction per dependent. So they save money considering how many dependents they have. Then step 5, it says federal withholding tax is calculated on taxable pay based on the tax table. FICA is calculated on the employee's gross pay, and then the net pay is based on the gross pay, federal withholding tax, and FICA. So these are kind of notes that are going to help us in figuring these things out. So step C, it says use if functions to calculate the regular pay and overtime pay based on the regular 40-hour work week in cells E5 and F5. So E5 and F5. It says pay overtime only for overtime hours. So it's only, you obviously have the 40 hours that they get paid normal wage for, and then overtime they get for the extra one. So you can see this first person worked 48 hours. So it's going to make a difference. And then of course it has other steps here, but we're going to get started with this one. So it's E5 was the first one I mentioned. We're going to figure out the formula for regular pay. And we're using the if function. So I'm actually going to go to the formulas tab. I'm going to choose insert function. And then I need to have the if function. So right here you can see it's the second on the list. I'm going to double click on it. And this functions argument dialog box is going to come up with, of course, logical tests. And if it's true, it's going to show this value. If it's false, it's going to do this one. And we're going to start entering your stuff in. So, and of course, as I enter it in here, it's going to change it over here. So the test here, we're figuring out regular pay. So the first cell we need to select is the number of hours. So D5, that's 48 hours we see its work. So it's going to be testing D5. So, and it's set to 40 hours. That's how much your regular pay would be for. So we're going to put D5 if something's greater than or equal to. So you're putting the greater than or equal right there. And then we're going to put in B21 and push F4. B21, of course, is referring to the 40 hours down here. So if D5, which is 48, is smaller than or equal to 40, and then we're going to continue here. That's our test here. If it's smaller than or equal to, I guess I said greater than by accident. If it's smaller than, if this is true, if that is the case, we're going to go and put in here D5, which is basically the idea that, of course, if it's true, they're going to put down D5, the number of hours. Excuse me. If it's not smaller than or equal to that, or excuse me, to B21, then it's going to be different. Now, I'm going to make one change here. So this is what you need to put in the 3 boxes. I'm going to explain it again after because it's kind of hard. It's a lot of new thoughts here with this, and you don't normally deal with accounting stuff. That's kind of what this is. We're going to go up here to our formula bar. Don't click OK yet. We're going up here to the formula bar. You can see we got our info in here. I've pushed F4 for B21 both times. And then I click after this and put an asterisk times C5. Now you noticed my function arguments box changed here. But I put down multiplied by C5. So C5, of course, is the hourly wage. Okay, so this right here is testing out. It's saying, okay, if D5 is smaller than or equal to 40 hours, it's going to go and just calculate, it's just going to multiply, D5 essentially by C5. But if it is greater than that, or it's equal to it, it's going to use B21, which is, of course, the 40 hours and limit it. So I'm going to click OK. We have this stuff here. It says 398, and that's correct. Okay, so your information should look like this in here. And I know it's a little bit confusing with it, but that's the idea. It's comparing with the hours. Now, next thing I need to do for regular pay is I'm going to take the fill handle. I'm going to click on it, hold it down. I'm going to drag it all the way down here to 41. Let go. I'm going to leave the totals row open right now. So I just dragged it down. Totals row we're leaving open. So we calculated E5. So let's calculate F5. And that is our overtime pay. So we're going to use the if function again, but a little bit differently, because obviously it's different for the fact that this is dealing with the hours over 40. So you can see there's 8 here, 8 for this one, 10. So it's going to make more sense. I'm going to click Insert Function. I'm on the Formulas tab still. I'm choosing if. It's at the top of my list now. I'm going to bring this down a little bit. I've got my function arguments box, and of course our test we're going to enter in here first. So if, let me make sure I've got this set right here. So if D5 is greater than B21, and of course push F4 because we want it to stay in absolute or cell reference here. So if D5 is bigger than D21 or B21, which is of course the 40 hours, how many they work, base 1, and then we're going to put in, of course, the answer it needs to put in if this is true, and of course we put an answer if this thing is false. So if it's true, we're going to put in open parenthesis and type in D5 minus B21, and I'm going to push F4 again, F4, and I'm going to put a closing parenthesis. So if it's true, it's going to minus B21 from D5, and then after that, we're going to put in, it's going to multiply by C5 again, and then multiply by B22. I'm going to push F4. So take a look at that. Make sure you got it right. So D5 minus B21, it's absolute. It's inside of the opening parentheses, and then, the parentheses, and then you're going to multiply that by C5, and then of course multiply that by B22. Then I'm going to push tab and go down to if it's false, just put down 0. That was the easier part there. So it looks like this up here in your formula bar, and then you saw how it looks inside the other part. So I'm going to click OK, and it should come out as 119.4, which is good. I'm going to click and drag, and of course remember it looks like this up here. I'm going to click on the fill handle, hold down, drag it down here. We're leaving that totals row open, row 17, and it should come up with that information. So we did E5, we did F5, and then it also says to calculate the gross pay. So I'm going to click on gross pay, that is G5. And basically, this one's a lot easier because it says gross pay is calculated based off of regular and overtime pay. So all I'm going to do is put equals, and I'm going to click on cell E5 plus sign F5. Oh, excuse me, F5. Let me try it again. So E5 plus F5. That's it. I push enter. Voila. It adds my gross pay because it's at basically putting these two together, or excuse me, yeah, these two together and adding them. So I'm going to bring that down. I clicked on the fill handle, dragged it down, and it looks like this. And it's correct because it says 517.4 here. All right, so we figured those out. Now we're on step D. There's a lot to these steps in this exercise. We're clicking in cell H5 under taxable pay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to multiply, here it says the number of dependents by the deduction per dependent and subtract that from the gross pay. So with 2 dependents, Abram's taxable pay is going to be 417.4. So I'm going to put this in here so you can see it. So equals, it said one of the first things we're dealing with, let me get to the right spot. So we got our gross pay, and then I'm going to put in minus because I'm going to subtract from that B5, which is the number of dependents, and I'm going to multiply that by B24, which if you look at B24, here's the deduction per dependent, so 50. So your formula should look like this: G5 minus B5 multiplied by B24, except I need to push F4 to make it an absolute cell reference. I'm going to press enter. It's going to come up as 417.4. That is correct. I'm going to click on again, grab that fill handle, drag down through row 16, and it gives me my answers there. So that one was easier to figure out. Then it says click, or we're going to click in cell I5 because we're going to use the VLOOKUP function in cell I5 to identify and calculate the federal withholding tax. With a taxable pay of 417.4, Abram's tax rate is 25%, and the withholding tax is 104. So that's a quarter of it. The VLOOKUP function returns the applicable tax rate, which must then multiply by the taxable pay. The reason we're putting in formulas is it's going to be different from each person because of how much they earned and things like that. So that's why we're doing this. So we're using VLOOKUP. So I'm on my formulas tab already. I'm clicking insert function and I'm choosing VLOOKUP. Now I have it here in my list. If you need to, you just click up here, get rid of this, type in VLOOKUP, I push enter, and it'll look it up for me. So if it's not on the list, make sure you do that. I double click on it, I get my function arguments dialog box for VLOOKUP. Now the things I'm going to enter in here, first thing, the lookup value is H5. H5, because let me move this to the side here. So H5 is the lookup value because we're dealing, of course, with taxable pay. So H5 goes in the first box. And then after that, we're dealing with the table array. So that is D21 through E25. And that is down here. So I go under taxable pay, D21, I click and hold down through E25, and I drag down through here. So it looks like this. I'm going to go back up here and push F4, and for me it makes them both absolute cell references. You might have to go in and do a little bit differently, but this is how it should look for your table array part. Then I push tab, column index number is 2, and then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click over here in the formula bar after all this, after that closing parentheses, and put down multiplied by, so asterisk H5. So it's going to look like this at the end, and you're going to see the function arguments box changes and looks like this. So result of 104.35, which is correct. I click OK. It comes like that. And then I click and drag, pull this down here, and voila, it looks like that. So that's good to go. So, and that is the reason we do that. Of course, I said it changes for each person. So that's step E. We're in step F now, almost halfway done. Calculate FICA. So I clicked on cell J5 because we're dealing with FICA. It's based on the gross pay and the FICA rate. So this one's a little bit easier. I put in equals, and then I'm putting in G5 because it's dealing with gross pay, then multiplying it by B23, which is dealing with the FICA rate. So you can see it selects this cell down here. And I'm going to push F4 because I want it to be absolute cell reference for this one. And then I'm going to push enter. You see it comes up with 3958, which is correct. I click and drag that fill handle. Of course, filling it in just like that. It says to calculate the net pay as well. That's K5. So I click in cell K5. Now the way we calculate net pay, I'm going to show you, is of course first you start with your gross pay. I put equal sign G5, it selects gross pay, and I'm going to minus from that I5, which is of course our federal withholding tax, and then minus from that as well J5, which is FICA. So I get my gross pay, and I'm just minusing these two from it. So my formula looks like this. I push enter, and there's my net pay. And I'm going to click and on there again, make it the active cell, grab the fill handle, and move it down. So at this point, your table should look like this. Then it says step G, copy all formulas down the respective columns. We did that each time as we went. Then it says step H, use the quick analysis tools to calculate the total regular pay, overtime pay, gross pay, taxable pay, withholding tax, FICA, and net pay on row 17. So it says start with total regular pay. So right here, this row. So what we're going to do is I'm going to click up in D5, and I'm just going to drag it down here to row 16. So E16. So E5 through E16. I misspoke there. Now you notice with it selected, it has quick analysis down here. So I click on that. I'm going to choose totals, and I'm going to choose sum. So I'm going to move away so you can kind of see it from far away. Totals and then sum. And you can see it puts in my sum right there for me. And then I'm going to go to overtime pay and do the same thing. So I select the information here in the column, and then I choose quick analysis, totals, sum. Just like that. You can see gross pay, I have that there. I'm going to do it again so the formatting stays the same. So I select it, quick analysis, totals, sum. Yeah, it says there's data already. Do I want to replace it? Yes, I do. So I click OK. Then it says taxable pay. So we're just going right down the row. Quick analysis, totals, sum, right there. And you can see it's doing it with the other ones as well. It says we need to do it for withholding tax, so we're going to do that. Click OK. You notice it's changing those numbers, so there's a reason why I'm doing it. You need to do it as well. FICA, totals, sum. I'm clicking OK again. And then, of course, net pay is the last one. And OK. So your table should look like this at the end, which is good. All right, then step I, it says apply accounting format to the range C5 through C16. So I'm going to do that. So C5 through C16. So that's the hourly wage. And accounting number format. I got to click on the Home tab. And I'm going to click on currency, or excuse me, the arrow next to it, and choose accounting number format. I could also click up here on the side. I would save it at this point. Mine auto saves it, so I haven't needed to click on it. But I would save it at this point just in case something happens. And then it says apply accounting number format to the first row of monetary data and to the total row. So total row, it says apply it. So I'm going to drag it across here. All these totals we made. And then I'm going to choose accounting number format. And then it says to do it for the first row of monetary data. So starting with regular pay, and in the row where Abram, his info is, we're selecting those and choosing accounting format. So it's looking like this. Then it says apply comma style to the monetary values for other employees. So I'm essentially clicking on E6 and I'm dragging across all the way here to, it looks like K16. So this right here, and then I'm going into my styles area. I'm gonna click the more arrow to show all my styles, and down in number format is comma. So click on that number format, comma. Then it says underline the last employee's monetary values. So I'm going to do that. Last employee's monetary values. So right down here, E16, I click and drag across. And I'm going to click on underline in the font group. And it looks like this now. And then it says use the format cells dialog box to apply top and double bottom borders for the totals. So I'm going to do that. So I select this one right here. So all these cells, E17 through K17, I go up here to the cells group, I click format, and then I'm going to go down to format cells. And then you can see I'm on the border tab. You may have to click on it. And then for the top one, we're just doing a normal border, so I can click top, normal. Then I need a double border, so I click on that and I click on the bottom. So you can see I have double on the bottom, normal on the top, and I click OK. And then you can see the change here with how it looks. Then what I'm going to do, step J, it says insert the appropriate functions to calculate the average, highest, and lowest values in the summary statistics area. That's down here. So you can see cell I-21 is where I'm starting with my averages. The way I'm going to do this, I'm just going to click on the cell, and then because we're dealing with averages, I'm going to go up here to auto sum in the editing group, click on the arrow and choose average, and then I'm going to select, you can see it says number of hours, so I'm going to go here to hours worked, click and drag it, and then push enter. So D5 through D16, and then it gives me that calculation. Then I'm going to do the same thing here. Go to the gross pay cell, cell J21, go up to auto sum, click the arrow, choose average, and I'm going to gross pay. So column G, selecting all those numbers except don't select the total, push enter, and then you can see it calculates it like this. And then net pay, same thing. I go and click on the cell, I go to auto sum arrow, click average, and then do the same thing with net pay. So a little repetitive there. And then 325.87 is correct. And I'm going to do the same thing here, except instead of average, I'm going up to auto sum and choosing max. So number of hours, select those, push enter, go to gross pay, click the arrow, choose max, and of course select all those in gross pay, push enter, so you can see what it looks like here, and then of course I'm doing it for net pay. So once you see how to do the first one, you basically just repeat it in a different cell, and of course selecting the appropriate data. Alright, so I've done that. I need to also finish with the lowest. So number of hours, lowest, I go back up to auto sum, min, and do the same thing. So I'm going to do that for the other cells. Now there's a reason why I'm not just using the fill handle to do it, is because I'm pulling from certain information. And if I have it move over just one row, or excuse me, one column, it's not going to work properly. So that's why I'm actually clicking in each one, telling it to use that function, because it's not going to work otherwise. So I've calculated all that information here using the formulas, and that says format the number of hours calculations as number format with 1 decimal. So I'm going to select these 3 cells, and I'm going to choose number format. From up here it's on general, I click the arrow, choose number format, and I need 1 less decimal. So now you can see it looks like this. And then it says the remaining calculations, so let's select these cells, as accounting number format, which it actually already is set to accounting number format, so I don't need to change it. Alright, step K. We're almost there, guys. Step K, it's a longer one. It says insert a new sheet called overtime. So I'm going to click on the plus sign down here. I'm going to rename it as overtime. Going to push enter. And now it says list the number of overtime hours for the week. Calculate the yearly gross amount spent on overtime, assuming the same number of overtime hours per week. And then we're going to add another row with only half the overtime hours using a formula. And of course, what is your conclusion and recommendation on overtime, and format this worksheet. So I'm going to show you what we're going to type in here. I'm going to zoom this in some so you can see it a little bit better. Alright, in cell A1, we're going to type overtime hours analysis. And then push enter, and you're going to type numbers of weeks. Pushing tab 2 times to go to cell C2 and typing in 52. Then I push enter again, and then one more time to go to a new row, so A4, based on this week. And then I push enter again. In cell A5, I'm going to type weeks. In B5, I'm going to type OT, so overtime hours. And then I'm pushing tab again and putting down OT and pay. And then I push enter. 36. And then I'm going to put in 560.18. And then I push enter. 52. 1872. Tab 29129.36. And push enter. So you may want to pause this. I am going to click on this here and make sure it's showing the decimals for you. You may want to pause this and then type it in. But we're going through and putting in this information here. Now, it's said to type in overtime hours for half of the year, so half of them. We're going to do this with a formula, not necessarily typing in the exact answer. So you can type in this part that I'm doing. Except this time, instead of typing in a number, I'm going to put in a formula. It's pretty simple. So for overtime hours, it's supposed to be half. All I'm going to do is put equals, click on 36, so cell B6, and then put a slash, of course, for divide, and then 2, so dividing it by 2. I'm going to push enter. You're going to see it put in 18, and then what I can do is I'm going to actually just click on the fill handle, hold down, drag down one cell, and that's exactly what I want it to do. And then what I can actually do as well is I'm going to click and drag it across here, because it does the same thing for the money, because it's supposed to figure out half. Now we are going to format a couple things here, so changing how it looks, and then we're going to do type a couple of conclusions down. So I'm going to click on cell A1. I'm going to make this bold. It looks a little bit nicer, and I'm going to do that for based on this week as well. And I'm going to select the 3 cells it's in and underline it. So I'm going to go up here to underline, so you can see I underlined it. Actually, excuse me, I need to choose bottom border. So I push the undo button, select bottom. Then let's make these bold. So I select these 3 cells. I choose, let me try it one more time. Control B. And then I'm also going to do wrap text. And then I'm also going to center it. So I made it bold, I chose to wrap the text, and I centered it. So it looks like this. And then I'm going to do the same thing up here for make this bold, so A10. And then I'm going to select the 3 cells here, bold, wrap text, and center it. It just makes it look a little bit nicer. We do need to enter in one number I missed here, 52, because it's the same amount of weeks there for the year. And so they want you to come to conclusions based off of this information. You can see with the amount of overtime pay, they had 36 hours with just 1 week, and so it really added up. This is just dealing with the overtime pay here. Well, one thing I do need to format, I'm going to select these 2 cells here. Let's change it to accounting number. Same thing down here, accounting number. So you can see those 4 cells we did that. The other ones you can leave the way they are. So you can see we have that there, and the conclusion we really come to when we look at this is that using, and I want you to type this in, using this week as a sample for an entire year. So they took 1 week and they're comparing it to a year, guessing this is what it would be. The total gross overtime costs are $29,129.10. That's a lot of money for people working overtime. They're working extra. And their conclusion here is if we can cut the overtime hours by 1/2, the total gross overtime costs are only $14,564.55. So I recommend we try, so type this all in, try to reduce employees' overtime hours by 1/2 to save payroll budget. And so this is something that companies actually have to do. They need to look and see. Sometimes they're going, oh man, we're spending too much money. We make so much. We do want to make sure we're making a profit. And they have to decide, okay, are we spending too much in a certain area? And you can see for this one, they were spending a lot in overtime. And so just by making it 1/2, they save about $15,000, which is a crazy amount of money. All right, so this is how this worksheet should look. This is how this one should look. We do have one thing I believe we need to change here before we save it. So these are how the two look. I'm going to hold down Control and click on my other tab, or excuse me, other worksheet, so both of these are selected because we are going to add a footer to it. So I'm going to go to Page Layout. I'm going to click in the Page Setup group. There's the dialog box launcher. I'm going to click on that, choose Header and Footer. And of course I'm choosing Custom Footer, and we're doing the same thing we've been doing the whole time. Left section, typing in first and last name. Center section, you're putting in the sheet name, and then right section, file name. So it looks like this. I click OK, click OK again. I'm going to save it. It already is on autosave, but make sure you save it. And then of course you're going to submit this as well. You don't have to ungroup it before you submit it to me. You can if you want to, but you have the one page or worksheet which looks like this, payroll data, and then of course overtime. And that is how you complete Excel Chapter 2 mid-level exercise number 1.